To the Middle East next, and Israel has denied its troops opened fire on crowds of Palestinians in southern Gaza. The health ministry there says dozens of people have been killed and more than 100 wounded in an attack near an aid distribution point in the city of Rafah. Let's get more from Jonathan Fowler. He's spokesperson for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, also known as UNRWA. He joins us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Welcome, Mr. Fowler. What are you hearing from your teams on the ground about what happened in southern Gaza yesterday?
Well, thank you for having me on the program. What we've heard, and this comes via international medics on the ground, is that effectively this Israeli-American aid plan has turned into a death trap. I mean, people are having to walk, tens and tens of kilometers to get a limited amount of aid. This is not how aid operations are meant to work. The situation is extremely fluid. But in incidents like yesterday, tragedies are completely unacceptable, and they should not be part of an aid system. That's the bottom line.
You use the term death trap. It is something that your boss, UNRWA chief Philippe Lazzarini, has also said in a statement. He said, I quote, aid distribution has become a death trap. If that is indeed the case, who is responsible for that?
It's impossible for me to say who bears responsibility for particular incidents when we don't have eyes and ears on the ground ourselves. But I mean, the reason we don't have eyes and ears on the ground ourselves is because we are shut out of aid operations. This Israeli-American plan goes against all principles of international humanitarian law, which are principles that allow the United Nations to do its job. The United Nations aid system around the world is based on such things as impartiality, neutrality, the interests of the population that needs to receive the aid, going to where people are that they need the aid, all of these kind of things. And so, in a sense, I mean, tragedies like this are baked into to this kind of plan because it's not based on international humanitarian law.
You talk about the interests of the people. Would it not be in the interest of the people of Gaza if a body such as the UN, such as UNRWA, cooperated with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in distributing aid to people in the region?
Absolutely not. We had a system in place. We have a system in place around the world, as I've already emphasized, a system based on principles of international humanitarian law. That's law. This plan, this scheme, as it's operating, does not follow those principles. Indeed, its previous CEO actually quit before it started operating, saying that he was not in a position to be able to guarantee respect for international humanitarian law. There is no reason to reinvent the wheel, and that's exactly what this operation does. The point is, during the ceasefire, proof of concept, basically, the United Nations system was able to massively scale up aid. There was no aid diversion, despite all the rhetoric around this kind of stuff. We were able to do something to alleviate the atrocious humanitarian crisis. That's a system which is tried and tested, worked in Gaza during the ceasefire, worked when it was allowed to work before the ceasefire, is not allowed to work, has basically been blocked from working since the beginning of March. That's the unacceptable point. There is no reason for the United Nations to work with this plan, with this operation, because we have mechanisms in place that, if we were allowed to use, could start working tomorrow.
Does the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation not have the expertise to distribute aid in Gaza?
I mean, you can draw your own conclusions from the fact how its operations are happening. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how they work.
But the GHF says it has distributed, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the GHF says it has distributed 4 million meals already so far. Surely that must count for something.
Well, given that the population of the Gaza Strip is 2 million plus people, and, I'm sitting here in Jordan, we have a warehouse here with aid that is not allowed to be brought in, which we could take in tomorrow if we were allowed, which would be enough supplies for 200,000 people for a month. 4 million meals basically for 2 million people. That's just not enough. Look, I mean, during the ceasefire, we were able to get in 600 trucks a day. That's the minimum, the absolute minimum that is required to meet the survival needs. And we're talking about survival here. This is not, people eating to their heart's content in the Gaza Strip. We're talking now with this GHF. Like a few hundred trucks. Maybe like, I don't know, 700, 800, more than around that. But I mean that's like a day and a bit. At scale, the scale required from the United Nations. So yes, I mean, we can all use statistics, but the statistics that are being given by the GHF underline the fact that it is not doing enough to meet the needs of the people. And it shouldn't be, because it should be the UN that is doing this.
Aside from the GHF, is there any aid organization left in Gaza that is currently being able to distribute aid?
Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, UNRWA, we have 12,000 operational staff in the Gaza Strip. We're by far the largest United Nations humanitarian agency operating. There's probably like a few hundred people from the rest of the UN system combined. Now, we have no food to give because of the siege on bringing in food for United Nations agencies, basically. We're still able to do medical work. For example, we have thousands and thousands of people going to our surviving clinics and seeing our mobile medical teams every day. We have 100,000 people roughly in our emergency shelters. That's mostly transformed schools. We're doing water and sanitation work. So, distribution of aid through services, we are able to continue that. But the point is that we are not able to deliver food, which is what is essential to the survival of a population, which is tipping into famine.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Jonathan Fowler, spokesperson for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let's get more from journalist Balig Sladeen in Tel Aviv. Balig, witnesses and Gaza's Civil Defense Agency claim Israeli troops fired on people who wanted aid. What are you hearing from the IDF?
Yes, yesterday it took the IDF about 14 hours until they published a statement saying that they don't know of any IDF troops firing at civilians in and around the center in Tal Sultan, and they have said that in a separate incident about 1 kilometer away from the center, which happened overnight, not during the operational hours of the center, they were firing toward a few suspects that got closer to the troops, and that was in order to warn them from getting closer to the groups. But this is a separate incident, according to the IDF. They even also published a video showing gunmen among civilian population that was on its way to collect aid, and they were firing at civilians, but it's not clear where that video was taken or when was it taken or who are these gunmen. They of course accuse Hamas of spreading rumors and fake news in order to sabotage this new mechanism that bypassed them. This is according to the IDF, and of course the fact that the incident happened yesterday, that takes time for the IDF to investigate in a full investigation and come with the conclusions. But for now, these are the initial findings.
There were also scenes of chaos and gunfire that were reported a week back on the day that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that runs these aid centers began operations. Is the foundation sufficiently prepared to distribute aid in Gaza?
Yes, several incidents has happened since the opening of these new centers, and I would say that they are getting smaller and smaller in scale and number. Almost every day there are some incidents that happen, specifically in Tal Sultan, apparently the biggest aid distribution center, but they are definitely getting closer and less chaos we see inside the compound of the distribution center. Just for clearing the numbers here, yesterday alone, more than 16,000 packages were distributed. We're talking about almost 900 meals to the people. And yesterday, the CEO of the GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, said that the demand is increasing day by day, and that's why that's why he is calling also on international organizations to join JHF in order to distribute the aid to, quote unquote, the right hands. That's what the CEO of the organization has said yesterday. Of course, it's still only 1 week or less than 1 week actually of this new mechanism. And until now, we've seen a few positive things happening, but also a lot of negative things happening in terms of chaos. And needs time in order to clear whether that will happen or whether that will work or not.
Meanwhile, Israel continues with its military operation in Gaza. What more can you tell us about that?
Yes, the Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, visited the troops inside the Gaza Strip yesterday, and he said that Hamas is losing control over the population and in Gaza Strip in general. And he ordered also the expansion of the operation, the northern part and the southern part of the Strip. The focus, I would say, in the past few days was on Khan Yunis, and specifically in the past 24 hours, the targeting of apartment buildings in the eastern part of Khan Yunis was the main focus. Apparently, this is the way the IDF is trying to force the civilian population, after warning, of course, to evacuate from that area, because the goal right now is to turn Khan Yunis, or East Khan Yunis specifically, to the same situation of Rafah, sterile, no gunmen or no Palestinian factions would be there. This is the main goal right now. In order to do that, of course, they need to convince the population to evacuate to El Mawasi, to the western part of Khan Yunis, and that's apparently the focus in the past 24 hours.
Journalist Balig Sladeen, thanks so much for that.
Thank you.